go ahead and get this meeting started. Okay, I'll call to order the meeting of the Air Pollution Control Board for Ventura County at 1:44. And can the clerk please call the roll?
Board Member Bennett. Board Member Blatz.
Here.
Board Member Edmonds.
Here.
Board Member Huber. Board Member Long.
Here.
Board Member Parks. Here. Board Member Ramirez.
Here.
Board Member Rollins.
Here.
Board Member Zaragoza.
Here.
Chair Pollack.
Present. Okay.
And Huber is here as well.
And yes, Supervisor Huber is here, and I saw Supervisor Bennett, so he will be here any second. So let's go ahead with the Pledge of Allegiance, and Supervisor Zaragoza, would you please lead us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so that brings us to item 4 on our agenda, which is minutes of our meeting held last, which was on November 12.
A motion approved. Second.
I have a motion, a second. Any comments or discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? It's passed unanimously. Item 5 is our agenda review. Are there any items that we need to add, delete, or move in order? Okay, seeing none, I'll move on to item 6, which is public comment. Do we have any public speaker cards? Is there anyone here from the public wanting to address us? Okay, doesn't look like it, so we'll move on to item 7, board comments. Are there any comments or reports?
I have, because we deal with air pollution, and it's good to know the city of Malibu just recently agreed to go to 100% clean energy after they had chosen a lesser amount. So that was exciting, and that's in the Clean Power Alliance. And then also the LA Unified School District has announced that they're going to go 100% clean by 2030. So it's nice to see these big organizations stepping up.
That is good. Well, I wanted to thank the supervisors for hosting a meeting in Moorpark. Moorpark came out in large numbers to greet you.
And we had a lot of fun. And
Had a good meeting.
I know, I wish we could draw crowds like that.
there was no parking, I understand, all over the place.
Yeah, we weren't quite built to accommodate that. Yes, Moorparkians can be very vocal when they need to be. We held a council meeting the night after, and we had our ag commissioner there to also answer questions about that. And one thing stuck out that I think should be of concern to this body is the VOCs that come off the crop. And I asked the ag commissioner what the numbers are on that. They don't know. They said that they should know by March. And what concerns me is that it could be insignificant, or it could be substantial, because the variation in the scale is an order of magnitude. And if it is substantial, that may hinder our efforts to reduce smog during smog season. And I pass that on to Dr. Tisopoulos, so that's something that he'll watch.
Would that be pollen, essentially, as the volatile organic compounds?
No. Am I on? Yeah, okay. No, it's not going to be just pollen. Actually, the odor that we all smell is terpenes, which is, chemically speaking, a reactive organic gas. It's one of the 2 ingredients that contributes to the formation of ozone smog alongside with the NOx emission reduction. So it is a very important issue, and unfortunately, we know there is a dearth of knowledge about the emission rates and amounts of emissions associated with these operations. And none of our air quality management plans or our air quality models here in Ventura or even elsewhere in the state take this particular source into consideration just because nobody knows anything about it. And just like you stated, Chair Pollack, right now, based on what we heard from our Ag Commissioner, hemp cultivation here in Ventura is responsible for approximately 3,600 acres. So when you compare it to the 92,000 approximately, give and take, acreage dedicated to ag operations, it's roughly less than 4%. We can argue, it's not a very big percentage, even though nobody can tell how big that emission rate is. But our concern is, what if that number grows to 10, 15% a year, 2 years later? Then we have a serious issue at our hands. And right now, we have a NOx-heavy strategy, which calls for the accelerated fleet turnover of light and medium-duty vehicles to reduce NOx emissions from the environment. When we let in additional VOC emissions, our already difficult task is becoming even harder to achieve. So we have to work extra hard. We have to push our regulated community extra hard just to stay even. Not to mention the increase in temperature as well, due to the climate change. So it is an issue that we have to very carefully monitor, and there are similar issues associated with the cannabis cultivation, which is not in our county yet, but we are getting nervous because we see what's happening in our neighboring counties, and the emissions and issues associated with that cultivation are very similar to hemp as well.
Right, so I didn't want to start a discussion on that, but I just wanted to make sure the board
Well, we
was
can't really
aware.
have a discussion on
Yeah.
it, or it would have to be on the agenda.
Exactly.
Yes.
But it does say that it's terpenes become VOCs when they're mixed with combustible gases like traffic. So if you're in an area with a lot of traffic and you have the terpenes, that's when you get the VOCs. So it's not just the terpenes themselves, it's actually the combination of combustible gases.
Correct. Terpenes themselves are VOCs, and you're absolutely correct. They react with the oxides of nitrogen in the presence of sunlight, creating ozone.
It looks like there is a discussion here in which we should probably agendize. And when you have more information, maybe in March, if you could bring it back so we could have further conversations
was
and
gonna be
some
our-
good information to discuss.
Yeah, the state
Versus
of
conceptual.
Colorado is doing the study, so we
Yeah.
can just get a copy of it when it's done.
That would be great.
Yeah, any information you bring back to us would be appreciated.
Right. Another thing I'd like to say thank you to, and just to be aware of, Miser Filtration had reached out to me about some issues that they're having. And so Latke has agreed to meet with them and discuss items. So we know that that's a company that's really working for air quality and so forth for our community. So I appreciate you understanding and working something out with them. Thank you.
Absolutely. I'll be visiting them this Friday.
One other thing I wanted to mention in my readings, there was a Washington Post article last week, December 5th, I think, that looked at average temperature rise across the continental United States. And surprise, surprise, Ventura County turned out to be the largest temperature rise since 1895 than any other county in the nation, in the continental United States. And once again, that's a component of smog formation that does not help our efforts.
Right.
All right, any other comments from board members? Okay, let's go ahead and move on to item 8, which is our consent agenda that includes items 9 and 10.
Second.
A motion and a second to approve. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? It's unanimous. And we're on to our regular agenda. Item 11 is approval of the plans and specifications, including amendments for the Air Pollution Control District Office Remodel Project located at 4567 Telephone Road, Ventura, California. And it lists the spec and project number, and the item is for approval of the waiver of minor bid irregularities, approval and authorization for the Director of Public Works Agency or his designee to execute the contract for Weissman Construction Incorporated of Canoga Park, California, in the amount of $3,509,001, and find that the project is categorically exempt from CEQA.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, we are very excited about this item. We are at a critical juncture. We are getting ready to commence the remodeling effort of our new home, and we have some good news to share with you today. I don't want to steal the thunder from my partners, my very good partners, county partners, the Public Works Agency, specifically Brian, Deanna, and Shanna Schlageter, that we are working very closely with. Brian has a few slides that we'd like to share with you, and after that, we can open it to Q&A.
Okay.
And it's your thunder, no stealing of thunder. Don't worry. Chair Pollock, board members. I'm Brian Deanna with the Ventura County Public Works Agency, and it's a real pleasure to be here. This is an important day for the Air Pollution Control District. The need for a new office space has been there for quite a while, and we've been in front of your board several times along the way for various milestones. This milestone is the most important, in my opinion. We're asking you to approve the plans and specifications for this office remodel project, to award the construction contract to Wiseman Construction, and to find the project categorically exempt from CEQA. So just a little bit of history and background for those of you who might not be here. So our group is lucky enough to be involved with the various county agencies and major construction projects that really help them to achieve their mission. And it was about 3 years ago that the previous APCO contacted me and asked for help for the project. And I was really excited about this discussion. And as I told Mike then, and I still believe now, that we have the staff that I think has a really unique expertise and experience that really can help this project succeed. So what is the project? So APCD bought a building to be their future home. It's just down the street from here on Telephone Road. It's over near the DMV. I think actually if you see, you can probably see the DMV in the background of this picture. This is from Telephone Road. It's built in 1983. It's 2 stories. The second story will become the main office for APCD with a small portion of the bottom floor as well. Most of the bottom floor right now is currently occupied by a tenant, and that's going to remain that way throughout the duration of the project and, into the future. As you can see, it's a typical commercial office building, right? If you go on the second floor, is a main hallway right down the middle of it with a bunch of separate units along the way. I mean, we've all seen 8,000 of these things before. The plan is to just completely remove that and build to suit a new office space that suits the needs of the district. Along the way, we identified various parts of work that were really good to do, really a good idea, but if budgetary restrictions were there, we didn't have to do these to make it an office space. So those are to replace the elevator. The elevator is old and maintenance would not be possible really. I mean, you can't get parts for it. So replacing the elevator, replacing the existing second floor restroom finishes, just the floor tile, the wall tile. It's there, it's in decent shape. It just might be dated a little bit. Replacing the roof. The roof was past its life. It needs to be replaced. And then some voluntary seismic upgrades. So in discussions, we thought that this is a good idea to make these additive bid alternates. And we did this for 2 reasons. One is we were just concerned about the costs coming in for the overall project, maybe too high. And then the second one, the most important, was this gave us some flexibility in awarding the contract. We got the prices and we could pick, maybe I can only afford to do 1 of them, or 3 of them, or 2 of them. It gave us the ability to make that decision after the bids were received. And so on November 28th, we opened bids. Wiseman Construction was the low bid, just based on the base, not including all of these. And then, as we discussed with the district, the price for all 4 of the additive bid alternates was acceptable and within the budget. So great news, we were able to accept all 4 of the bid alternates. And so that's what we're asking for approval for. And with that approval, we'll start executing the contract and start with construction. So was really all I have.
So sometimes there's a downside in picking the lowest bid. Does this contractor have any history of marking their stuff really low and then having to go up 25% or so?
Not that I'm aware of, as our agency has not worked directly with this contractor, but I do have a lot of experience interacting with them. They've been trying to bid on other projects in the past recent years. I would say just judging on the questions they've asked, I think it's a good sign, but no, I don't have any.
So we didn't ask any referrals or anything like that?
No.
And then the second thing is, do we know if anyone has been suing them?
No, not that I'm aware of.
But we didn't research that.
No.
I'm tentative because like we've had the Fillmore Fire Department
Yes.
build out we had some issues with the contractors and if we would have, yeah. Anyways, so if you could just make sure, I'd appreciate it.
Definitely.
Yes. Carmen.
Thank you very much. And I haven't dealt with this at this level before, but I know in our city of Oxnard, we've had always asked about the history of workers' injuries and if there's any record of OSHA complaints or unsettled claims or some very dangerous things. I assume the county does look into that as well.
Yes, but we typically haven't, that would be putting all these requirements as into the proposal. We haven't done that in the past. We've looked into it, but so I guess, yes, there's ways you can start qualifying contractors. I guess the downside to that potentially is you eliminate some contractors from being able to propose on the projects, which then just maybe makes prices higher. So yes, there are things, it's called an experience modification rate for injuries, and then you could say a minimum of 1.0 or 1. We didn't do that on this project. It has been done in the past in other agencies. We don't typically do it at the county.
Well, in the future, I'd like to recommend it because it gets very controversial later when someone comes forward and say, hey, this company did not, and I know nothing about this company. I'm assuming everything's going to go well. Workers or the representatives come forward and say, you're choosing a company that has a terrible history of allowing its workers to be injured or worse. And I've had that experience at the City of Oxnard. I don't want to see it repeated ever again. But thank you very much.
Certainly, I will say that, so as part of our projects, we have an inspector. It's an employee of the County of Ventura Public Works, and goes there and is very knowledgeable and very experienced with construction. All they do is go out and monitor construction activities and report safety activities. We take it very seriously, and we are on the spot quite a bit during the construction. So we look out for it too as well.
I think what the question was too, any prior liabilities or infractions and so forth, as opposed to whether he's going to build a good project or not. And I think this is one of the questions that was asked, what kind of assurance do we have this contractor is not being sued or not following, the labor rules or laws and so forth. I think that was a question, if I'm not mistaken. The other thing that I want to find out, we've been working on this for, 3 years or so. I remember we were looking at buying in Oxnard, buying in Camarillo, and we ended up buying this property. What's the timeline to complete the project?
So with the timeline, with your board's approval today, we'll begin executing the contract, getting the various documents. Their contract will start early January, so at the beginning of the year, and construction will take basically the year, and then to move in, so potentially next year, today, and anniversary, they'll be moving in. They'll be celebrating the new year.
So you're looking maybe 1 year potentially?
Yes.
Okay.
That's the plan.
Is there a way to incentivize not having a lot of contract changes? They find out they need more, whether it's maybe through incentive for coming in on time or something along those lines, or coming in early. And I just also, on a separate note, I noticed that elevators can be really expensive things that you don't know what you're messing with until you get in there, for example. So that kind of got me into this thought about cost overruns.
So to address the elevator, certainly, there's a lot of challenges with elevators. But the timing, doing it now is the best idea because it's not occupied. The worst thing would be to do all these improvements, move in, and 2 months later, the elevator's down and everyone's walking up the stairs. Mm-hmm. So I guess now is at least the time where we are more poised to kind of be reactive to those problems that occur because it's not occupied on the top floor. So they would be cheaper, I would say, to deal with because we don't have to walk around employees. So the first part, the assurance, is just kind of oversight is our best assurance at this point in time, and a good set of plans and specs that we've reviewed several times, and being on top of everything and thinking about things before they happen. So management, I think, is our best tool at this point in time.
And I think with our hospital, we may have had some incentives for coming in early. So or coming in under budget, those kind of things that you could work into it, I think particularly the under budget part,
Yeah.
that's a positive where we can. So I know we have some leeway to do that if that's something that's needed.
And did we send a contingency for change orders?
So there is a contingency in the budget. I don't know what the number is, but if I look at the board letter, I can.
It's usually about 10%.
Yes, $400,000. And so typically, at this point, we try to be around 10%. That's around what is an industry standard. This is a little bit over that, if you see. So I think that's a healthy number. It's a safe number.
I think the good news, if I can add one more part, not only we were able to select the main proposal plus the 4 addenda, but it came under budget a little bit. So we were able to address all of them. And plus, we do have the contingency in anticipation. We are going through a remodeling that always surprises, as many of you are pointing out. So we think we are pretty well prepared, or as well as we can be prepared, at this juncture.
Okay, Mr. Rollins, you had a question?
Yeah, the 2 items that seem to be options, it seems almost like that would be mandatory. The seismic upgrades, I mean, like that, isn't that something whenever you remodel, you have to automatically do that?
Well, the building, because of its age, technically can be grandfathered in, and we don't necessarily have to go through the seismic upgrades. But we think in the interest of and safety of our own employees, as well as our tenants, we have our tenants in the first floor, I think it will be a very smart investment for us to part with our money and go through the seismic upgrades.
Yeah, it would seem if this is going to be a long-term building, you don't want to be retrofitting it later on if it's something that needs to be done now.
I agree 100%. And as Brian said, if you want to do that, now is the time.
Okay. Ms. Edmonds.
It's turned on.
There you go.
My question is I've heard some concern from people about the past history of the corporation you're recommending. Is there any way to pass it with a codicil that says we are approving this now with the idea that there will be some look at the past as to their record on injuries or default or whatever? Is there any way to do that, which would then allow us to go ahead with it?
I guess it's up to your board.
I will say that I just looked up in the court cases for Ventura County, and there's no court cases for Wiseman, so that's very beneficial, and I appreciate that very much. So it's always a checks and balances. I think that's an appropriate question, but I checked for myself, and.
Isn't there, Mr. Chair, isn't there a check for the contractor's licenses in Sacramento and?
So part of our due diligence in even coming to you and recommending award of this is to check their licenses are all up to
Right,
date.
right.
They're not debarred. So yes, there are certain things that we do check and we do require of the contractors, and we've made all those checks, and this contractor passes all of those checks.
Good.
Okay. Any other comments, questions?
Well, with that, I make the motion that we approve.
Okay, have a motion. Do I have a second? Anybody? A motion and a second by Mr. Rollins. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed? Okay, it's unanimously approved. And we'll look forward to moving in.
We too.
Item 12 is adoption of a resolution approving one new position, allocation classified as APCD Management Assistant 4, clerical confidential, effective December 10, 2019. Dr. Rizopoulos.
Yes. Currently, we have 48 full-time positions in our agency, and there is one administrative assistant 4 assigned to me, dedicated to me exclusively to assist me with my duties. None of my 5 other managers have any assistants. Occasionally, they'll use the services of my assistant. The responsibilities over time of that individual has increased quite a bit. As you know, we have expanded responsibility with the incentive, grant incentive monies that we are receiving, way too many contracts that are being signed. We have increased reporting responsibility as part of implementing our obligations under AB 617. We are assuming enhanced responsibilities from HR. We are trying to institute a regular performance evaluation program where each and every employee of ours will be subject to a performance evaluation annually with no exceptions. So there is no humanly possible way to have one individual do all these things. So we are recommending that we create a position that is currently funded in the budget as a fixed-term position. But from this point on, we would like to make it permanent. And it will be subject to an open recruitment.
Okay, any questions from the board?
Sounds good.
Okay, I have a motion and a second for approval. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? It's unanimous. And that brings us to the end of our agenda. We do have a standing committee meeting immediately following this meeting. So I think that's Mr. Bless, Supervisor Zaragoza, myself, and Supervisor Bennett if he's around. So we
Happy
will,
holidays, everyone.
I'll call this meeting adjourned and we will go to our standing committee meeting. Thanks, everyone.
Short and sweet.